You see a lot of people telling other people's stories. But for me, what a story is relating something that's happened, and it can be to someone else or it could be to you, and then threading a message in there that is yours, that's you, and that's my story. And so I try to do that with every film I make. And if you don't have that, if there's no integrity in the finished product, you lose the love. Like, it takes so much to make something that if you're not proud of what you made, then everything else doesn't matter.
Listen, Stokely, where we tried to be involved, to listen and learn for us all to evolve. So welcome to you and welcome the world. We hope you enjoy the stories to be told.
Welcome to Stokely, a podcast where we explore environmental conservation, our human mindset and adventure. Each week we invite you into conversation with people from all walks of life, people who truly inspire us and set about contributing to a greater place for us all to call home. So please take some time to settle in for our conversation today with our host, Maya.
Hi everyone, and thanks for joining in today as I have a chat with Dean Leslie, and we get to find out a little bit more about his personal insights to why and how he tells stories. Dean's career as a filmmaker has essentially been one big adventure, a roller coaster of experiences and lessons. In the year of 2020, with the birth of his first child, it's provided Dean with an opportunity to stop and reflect on the past few years of a stacked travel schedule, filming and editing year in and year out. The work Dean and his teams have done over the past few years has likely been seen by every trail runner, and that's no understatement. The way Dean has changed his approach over the years is one of the biggest takeaways I took from the conversation, along with the grounded insights to how to tell story and to be a creative. So I really hope you enjoy this conversation and get something out of it. I hope it sparks a conversation in your own life. I'd like to take a moment now to thank the traditional custodians upon the lands where this podcast is created and listened to, and I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present, and emerging. Thanks for tuning in today, and I hope you enjoy the conversation.
So we spent years, and I say we, it was mostly Hannah, like we tried to have a kid for a long time, and got to a point where we sat down and we just chatted about it. And even getting to the point of wanting to have a child was a lot of discussions on whether we wanted to or not. And but ultimately it was something like deep down that we both wanted to experience. And then when it's happening, it took years and years, and we got to a place where we're like, okay, well, maybe it won't happen. And so we need to be okay with that as well. Like that's a different, it's not something that we imagine for ourselves, but we must be okay with it. And then Hannah got pregnant, like maybe, I think she went on like a 2-month sabbatical back home, and she went to Europe, just traveling on her own and visiting her sister. And like 2 weeks in, she phoned me saying she was pregnant. So it's kind of out of the blue after like acknowledging that it might never happen. And then the fear grips you of being a father. And it's so much easier than being a mother, for sure. But Hannah's studying her PhD. She hates me talking about it, but she feeds me onto a lot of cool stuff. And she was talking about, there's this guy, Bruce Lipton, and talking about the stages of development in toddlers, like 6 years old. And so supposedly in the first 2 years of your life, you live in a dream state. So you are 100% in your subconscious. There's no conscious part of your brain. So you are literally downloading your subconscious, and you slowly come out of that from 2 to 6. And by 6, you're in your full conscious. But in that 6-year period, it's a download period of you downloading the foundation of who you will be through everything you're seeing, experiencing, feeling, touching. And so I took that away out of it, because that's quite a big thought as a parent. And and just sat with it for a while. And I said to Hannah, I was like, this is probably the most exciting, liberating thing you could ever do, because none of us are the people we thought we would be. None of us are the people we want to be. We try to be those people, but we often aren't them. And now there's this opportunity to take the best of what you know and what you've learned, and instill it in this little human that's going to use it. It's not a conscious thing, it's just a foundation for him to then become whoever he's going to be, and then you let him go and be that. And I thought that was quite a wild thought. And it, whenever you have a bad day, because you have a lot of them when you're on minimal sleep, it's the thing I always go back to. It's like, okay, cool. This is, how should I be here? And not get caught up in my own shit all the time, because I always end up, we all end up just caught in stuff that doesn't matter. So it's quite, it's been a massive life experience. And we're only 7 months in. So,
mate, I've heard this. It's a great thing that you didn't line up for a flat roller coaster. It's going to be a wild ride.
Totally.
The work that Bruce Lipton does is incredible, actually.
Amazing.
And like you applied it in the context of a child going from up to the age of 6, but some of the work that he does is all about how we get back to that as adults, as like fully programmed habitual adults in whatever state we're in, and with whatever the thoughts we put through our minds daily and the habits that we have. Like, how do we try to almost revert back to that, tapping into that subconscious and rewiring so much of what we do, and it's powerful stuff.
No, for sure. And it's stuff I've been getting into. So Han's doing her PhD in integrated medicine.
Wow.
So it's all based on quantum science. And so she feeds me stuff that's like just opening up my world completely,
Oh,
and
wow.
and conscious thing. It's all stuff we know, right? Like it's all these practices that have been around for thousands of years, and then it falls into surfing and running, and there's all elements of these things that are so much more than an activity. That's why you have just huge followings and people doing it all the time, because it's very rare in your daily life that you have a practice that can put you in a space of being 100% in the present, because your conscious mind's either in the past or the future. And so the minute you're in the present, you're tapping back into your subconscious. And I think that's incredibly powerful. And that's why these things are powerful, be it whatever it is for you. I love that stuff. It's stuff that I'm mostly listening to at the moment or reading.
Yeah. I'm really, really excited about your next project that you're going to put out there and subliminally change everyone's brain chemistry whilst they're high on living in the present moment, watching someone, in some beautiful part of the world after some incredible physical feat. And lo and behold, Dean's just rewiring the world for a bit more love and peace.
No, but it's, that's why doing running films for the last decade, it's not something I ever guessed I would do, but there's so many elements of that, because you can change someone's day by just inspiring them to get outside. It can change your day around. And if you can change a day, then maybe that changes your week, and maybe that changes your month, and maybe that changes who you are. It's little things, it doesn't need to be these grand, massive things. And it's so simple. It's not deep, and it's not like convoluted and like super hard to understand. It's just a very simple experience that's like intrinsic to being content. And without those activities, you're just stagnating. If you don't have these outlets to tap into something that turns everything off.
So this new kind of knowledge that you've been really kind of experiencing and working with lately, if you were to know that 10 years ago, do you think that would have changed a lot of what you did as a filmmaker and the stories that you told?
I don't. Okay, so I don't think it's not news. The things that I've done haven't really changed in the last 10 years. I had some things that inspired me just over 10 years ago, and it was mostly books, experiences that I had when I was growing up, things that are important to me. And so the stuff that I'm learning now is just like explaining why I felt things and why I was doing things a certain way, and maybe helping me to correct. It's like that whole thing, you need to know the rules so that you can break them. You need to understand them. And so you go through and you're kind of blind to all of this, but you're doing it anyways. And then you come across this knowledge and it just kind of starts connecting everything for you. And I think that's super powerful, like when you can get to that space where you're applying all the teachings that you've had for the last 10, 15 years into something that's understandable. Yeah, I don't, to answer your question, I didn't even answer your question. The question would be, I don't think it would have changed because you have to go through the process. But the intent behind the stories I was telling within the trail running world never really changed. It took me a while to get my foot in the door where I could really give my voice to the stories. And it doesn't happen in every film. But the things that were important to me, I've done those throughout. Since 2013, I was producing films that I wanted to produce.
What are the things, like the values that drive, like the most important things to you that you want to at least try to convey through your art?
So initially it was purely through the work. If you ignore everything else, the very simple thing was connection. So I had things that I connected with. I grew up in the ocean, and that gave me this arena of wilderness that you have direct interaction with. It's all over your body, submersed in the water, and you don't think about that. You're just surfing and you get to hang on the beach the whole day in the summer with your friends, and you have all the stuff around it. But when I became older, the thing that really touched me was having just that experience of wilderness, and the power of it and the respect for it. And so I found it really easy to translate that into trail running and the mountains, very similar, even visually it's similar. And so right throughout, that's been the goal of sharing that with people and inspiring people to try it, even if it's through a singular medium. But running like surfing can be a gateway to so many other things. So that's been it. And, obviously there became a community aspect in that. And that's something that I'm slowly learning. I'm still it's never been something that's been hugely important to me, but I'm realizing the importance of it now, especially being a father and having a support structure around and having community and people you rely on. But it started with nature. And it's probably become a little bit more about people as it's progressed.
Let's get into that. How has filmmaking, storytelling, for you as the creative that you are, how has that changed over the last 10 years?
Yeah, so when I never wanted to be a filmmaker, ever. I was never young and imagined I'll be a filmmaker. I didn't know what I wanted to be right up until I was about 20 years old. But I knew the things that I liked, and someone, I can't remember if it was a counselor in school or something when I was 18, told me to just follow things that made you happy, gave you joy. And then if you did that, then, you know, you would put a little bit more effort into it because you enjoyed it, and eventually you'll make something of whatever that is. You know, it's going to lead you in a path. And my parents were down with that. They 100% supported me, which was vital for me to have their backing, you know, that I wasn't taking a traditional path of university. I still went to film school, but I turned down scholarships, and I was going to do business science, or a Bachelor of Science in Earth, Environments and Biological Sciences. And I had automatic acceptance into like an architectural school. And then I went to like draw cartoons at a film school. And, you know.
So good.
And they supported me, and I loved drawing, and I loved painting. And then through that process, it became mechanized, and animation became computer-based. And that was one thing I knew, is that I didn't want to sit in front of a computer. And so then I got into photography, and I just fell into film through a bunch of coincidences that happened through that period. But if I look back, it's something I always did. Since I was 12 years old, I had a camera in my hand. I was filming surfing right through. I was cutting VHS to VHS, like syncing music at home with all the like rigging up stuff. And so it's something I always loved. I loved the little technical aspects of it. Using the machines and making something creative. And so there were so many aspects of like having an idea, thinking it out, and then the actual process of it, which was kind of nitty and gritty, like getting into the actual cutting process. And it was physical, you know. Back then it was like, I was like stopping on one VCR, trying to sync it with another. And it's like, you got like a little orchestra going. And so I really just enjoyed that. And it was very similar to, it's similar to any creative process. And then when it suddenly dawned on me that I could possibly do this and make money from it as a career, so like make a living from it, that was kind of wild to me, and still felt too far-fetched, you know. It was just not from the world I came in. I was like, it was a very traditional school. You went to university and you did, you know, very down the line stuff. All my friends were doing very similar stuff. But I did have a couple close friends that after I like really kicked off, they also followed. I'm not saying they followed me. They, at the same time, they were breaking the mold, you know. So suddenly you have more reference points. And I went onto a big film set. There was like 150 crew, and I worked on this film for 2 months, and it just seemed like very big, like saturated, too many voices. And I was young and I was cocky, and I was kind of looking at all this, and I was like, I could do all of this myself, you know, I could definitely do this. And not knowing anything, like just, you know, that was like an internal thought that I had. I was like, I could definitely do this if someone gave me the opportunity. And so I set out for the next 5 years to get the opportunity to be given the space and the budget to go and make film. And that was my goal. And so I started a company with a guy, and we did whatever we needed to do, websites, you know, I'd direct a music video and then go like second assist on some documentary, and then I'd be an assistant somewhere else, and then I'd go and produce something. I didn't care. I just wanted to learn and just get into it. And back then, what film was for me was just a creative learning process. I was just super into the making of it, not the message. Like I was just all in about the make. How do I learn how to make this? How do I become better at making this? And so every time you're just learning a little bit more, and you're learning a little bit more. And as the years progressed and I had better and better opportunities to tell stories, I realized that it was now about like, okay, cool, you know, you've got the rough, you've got the rough like cast, like how you can make a film, and it never stops, right? You always learning that process. You can always fine tune it. It's why I'm attracted to it. It's just never ending. But then now what becomes important is the message, and if you don't have that, if there's no integrity in the finished product, you lose the love. Like you will lose if you're not. It takes so much to make something that if you're not proud of what you made, then everything else doesn't matter. So initially, you're proud of the fact that you just made the thing, and that lasts for a really long time. But now my expectation for myself is a lot bigger. And it's difficult because it's not like I'm just sitting in my house and I have so much money that I can just be like, oh, I'm going to make this film and this is what it's going to be about. You have to navigate with brands and marketing people and people that also want something, and then work your creation into that and give them what they need and give yourself what you need. And that's a very delicate process.
Not to mention the incredible changes in technology over the last 10 years, hey? And the platforms and the mediums that you can, that you have to display your artwork.
No, it's wild. Like just in the last, since 2009, the changes in film gear definitely changes the creation process, but doesn't change the message, right? So it just changed how you make it. But saying that, one of my mentors, he was an indie filmmaker since the mid-90s. Now, if you just think about that, and he was making cameras. So, he was helping develop the one camera he helped develop, actually won Slumdog Millionaire, the best cinematography. So it's, those guys have always been around. There's just now a lot of them.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's super exciting because now what's really important is the only thing that is your point of difference, which is how you tell the story and what you're saying. And that's what it's all about. And, I got lost in that tech stuff for a long time, and I still do because you get excited, but you don't need the new stuff all the time if you have that strong foundation of storytelling.
Yeah. So for you, the storytelling is always going to be that foundation that you have a pretty strong sense of connection to and know what you're trying to get at, and the filmmaking. Like, does it flow over into the actual filmmaking, or is it, does that also is that just on a different level in terms of how you put it all together?
Yeah, so I'm still learning, dude. I'm learning all the time, and I'm growing as a person. I look back on how I was, and we went through different stages where we had quite a few people working within our company that we had, and then I stripped it down, and then you balloon back up, and now I'm back to where I started, which was just me, and now my wife is with me, and we just do our films together, and we bring on certain people on each project if we need them. And I've always struggled with collaborating. It's like a massive weakness of mine, because I like the process. I like making the stuff, and I find it really difficult to watch someone else doing a part of that, even though, I can acknowledge when I can't do something or someone can do it better than me. But yeah, and so if I look back now, how I make films, I was scared for a long time of failing, because you have a lot of people that someone's asked you to do it, they've trusted you to do it, and you don't know if you can do it. How do you know it's like a vague idea you have in your head, which then's got to be pulled out into reality and made. And so that whole creative process is just a massive, just of highs and lows all the time. Like you get super excited on the idea, and then you like go into the process, and then you're like, oh my God, I do not know if I can do this. And then you're like, no, I've got it. Like you have an amazing moment on shoot, and then you come back into the edit suite, and then you think you've messed it all up. And every film's like that. And it's like, it doesn't ever change. And so as long as you can, I've only learned to acknowledge that in the last couple of years. And so how I was with other people on those shoots, how I enjoyed those shoots, I enjoy is a strong word. How I experienced them, that's obviously different for me now, because I am not fearful as much of the process anymore. I can acknowledge that, like, okay, there will be doubt along the way. That's fine. That's part of it, right? It's about problem solving this, and you can problem solve it because you've done it a few hundred times. And so when you're fearful, you are not always the best version of yourself. And I would probably say that that's been something that, if I could go back, it's something I'd change, but I know that I needed to go through it. And so I was hard on people that worked with me, like super hard, because I wanted to make the best film, and nothing else around that really mattered. It was just like all about that. And I wouldn't, sometimes I'd find difficult to acknowledge someone going through something personal, like while you're on shoot. I'd just be like, cool, we'll deal with it in like 10 days time. Let's do this now, and I'm very headstrong like that. And so, yeah, that's been a big change for me. Just like, it's just a film. It's a lot more things more important than it. So like, what's this person going through, and how can I make them enjoy this period or enjoy this process, and how can I enjoy it better? That's been the biggest change for me, probably. Losing the fear.
Speaking about being introduced to new concepts of essentially study and new concepts of the mind, I've spoken to this a couple of times actually on a couple of podcasts, and it's this scale upon which we work from, and it's so interesting that you bring up working from a state of fear, and it's a very low. It's a very low frequency to be operating from, and it, as you said, like it can make you operate and work in a way and make decisions based on something that is, it may not bring out the best in yourself or the situation or other people. And I just thought it's so interesting that even you have faced that.
For sure. And it's something that you kind of know, but then when you're doing it, you can't acknowledge it until you have like a much deeper understanding of all of it. And once you have that deeper understanding, then you're able to be in the moment to be like, okay, hang on. This is what's going down, and I need to just check myself a little bit. Because it's not possible just to be hundreds all the time. You do go through periods, and it's just about the acknowledgement. And what Han said to me the other day, she was saying, she heard a saying about making decisions. So if you can make decisions based on faith rather than fear, you'll never make the wrong decision, ever. And so that's something really easy to follow. So that you just check yourself and you're like, hang on, like, why am I saying this, or why am I going to do this? And if it's based on faith, you will never go wrong. And what an easy rule to follow, right? Like, we could all do that. That's super easy in practice. It's scary, but that's the fear, right? So, because decisions made in fear and panic don't often pan out, not in the long run, at least.
Yeah. Mate, this is kind of blowing my mind, but like literally I was on this, I was in this kind of advisory meeting on Friday, and that like exact sentence, that exact quote came up. It's like the guy that was leading it was like, okay, we need to just kind of like recalibrate here. Okay, we need to operate out of faith and not fear, and let's all bring ourselves to that space of within ourselves, and let's put it out to everyone here in the group, because as you said, man, you just can't go wrong. And I just
no,
it's so
what that is. It's a morphic field there, dude. Have you listened to Rupert Sheldrake at all on morphic resonance?
I haven't actually, no, but I've heard his name quite a few times. I haven't looked at his work.
I'll send you to a lecture that I have of his. It is completely mind blowing and life changing.
Yeah.
On his theory on morphic resonance, and it's the scientific theory of the interconnected memory of the world, but with cases where if I don't actually, I'm going to deep dive. That's going to take up an hour of. But it's about morphic fields, and there's fields that we can tap into, and the closer your community is, the higher the frequency of those fields. His theory is that the brain is not storing memories. It's just a signal. It's like an antenna, and that the memories that you're pulling them in with your antenna. And a great example of that he gives is when you feel someone staring at you in the back, which is something that's never been studied, but it's something that we all can experience, where you feel someone staring at you. How do you feel someone staring at you? Unless they're projecting something. And that's his, and he goes deep into it, but morphic fields, it's the collective consciousness.
Wow. Oh, mate, we've got a few more chats to come after this podcast. I can tell you that much. Oh, geez. Oh, mate.
I was never into this stuff though, man. I was like, I was down the line, but
I know this is a whole new Dean that I'm meeting here, and I'm totally on board, mate. We are gonna look out. I tell you what, we need to book another trip over to China and have some more tea ceremonies, and then see where the time takes us. We'd go into a different. We wouldn't even be worried about Chronos time, mate. It wouldn't even exist. We'd go far beyond that. Jeez, how do we bring this back to? How do we bring this conversation back? It must be, I would love to know how working with Hannah has kind of changed the way you go about things. Because, and again, I was speaking to this topic somewhat with a past guest, Adam Gibson, and he was speaking to it in the sense
I love that podcast, by the way.
Oh yeah, well that's the one with the frequencies, right? Like you know what I'm getting at. And I was going to say, just like he referred to how many different businesses now are having females and women, and that women energy leading them, and they come with this kind of different approach of like almost like a regeneration in many ways. And I wonder, I'd love to know if you're bold, if you're honest enough to share it, like if you think Hannah had any kind of influence on the way that, you guys went about doing things after you set up your own business.
Yeah. So Hannah, when I met her, she was working in a DNA lab. So she's from like a chemistry background. She's got a master's in forensic, like crime scene forensics. And I met her on a movie set with her best friends are movie producers, like very successful movie producers here in Cape Town. And so I met them through them. I met her through them, and she continued to work with them over the years. She has a lot of experience in very high budget, like big productions, on the business side. And so she did work with us through TAA on when I had the African attachment, she did work on projects. And then when we went full time and we moved out of the city, we moved into a little village, like an hour out the city. And it was me and her. And it's super challenging in terms of like, we spend every single like minute of every day with each other. Our lives are totally interconnected, and helped me become a better person over the last 10 years, just through the kind of yin and yang. We're totally different people. And so working with her, I always felt safe because I don't like the business side, and I don't like all the wheeling and dealing. But I'll do it. And it was just nice to have someone that had my back. And so I knew she always had my best interests at heart, because we were together. It was us. And so that really freed me up a lot, just to focus on the things that I wanted to focus on, and she took care of other things. And she's the only person that I go to for notes, because she is brutally honest. Like if I pass, like she's my litmus test. If I pass her on a cut, then I know that I'm hundreds, because she will rip it apart. And I just, it's really hard to find that honesty in people with creative work, because it's so personal, and you're showing someone something that you've put hundreds and hundreds of hours into. So you obviously there's elements of it you like, and so to find someone that will come in and not really care about that and give their honest opinion is super valuable. So I wouldn't be the half the filmmaker I am without her in my corner, and then I wouldn't be half as decent human I am without her either. So
Wow, man, that's cool to hear. Eh? It's really, really nice to hear.
Yeah, and then seeing, I actually listened yesterday. I went on a long drive. I had to go the other side of the mountain, and I listened to your podcast with Tyson.
Oh yeah, Tyson Yankapota. Yeah.
Oh, what a podcast! I loved that, and what he was talking about with women and motherhood, like I really resonated with, because just I've been fortunate to be here the whole time with Fleur, but it's just another level where like if like he is 100% dependent on her. So it's just this like really incredible, difficult, like selfless period a woman has to go through, where it's just like you are the end. Like there is no contingency beyond, and so it's been quite incredible just to like be witness,
Yeah. It really kind of puts men in their place, hey, where they sit back and like
totally. Yeah.
You call yourself like the whatever, all those traditional sayings about, being the breadwinner of the house and all that BS. It's just like, nah, not at all.
Yeah, no, it's like the easiest thing you could do, right? Is go out and work in a different environment and come back in the evening.
Absolutely. Oh yeah. Oh, that's it. And that, yeah, some of the things that Tyson speaks to is a whole nother chat we can have another time, mate. There's no doubt about it. Yeah, absolutely. It's just such an evolution, mate, that you've been going through over the this year, let alone the last kind of 10 years as you've spoken to.
Yeah, it's obviously you're growing, as a person, and I worked for so long, for so hard. I was on the road for 4 to 5 months a year since 2011, every year. And then when I would get home, the workload was worse. When I had TA, we were working 6-7 day weeks, consistently throughout the year, 12-hour days. You just like never, there's not a lot outside of that space going on. And I knew it was unhealthy, but I didn't know how to stop it, because like the train was going, and it was like supposedly what you wanted. Like, I wanted it. I chose all that stuff. And so it really took, 2016 was the first year I started trying to put actions in place that would take me to the place that I wanted to be. And then it took me a further 3 years after that, probably, to get there. And with a lot of things happening along the way that I hadn't necessarily planned or wanted. But yeah, it has been a journey, because I wasn't the person I thought I was. Right? Like, you just have this I had a realization in my mid-30s. Like, I thought I was better than I was, and I wasn't always like a person I was proud of in terms of just like my everyday life, but all the stuff around me, people would look and say, like, you're super successful. I was like, well, I don't even, I had to define it. Like, I had to sit down and define success, because I did not feel successful at that point. Because financials at the end of the year or a growing business was not defining it for me. It wasn't, it wasn't what I had never really thought about it. And so going through that process of defining success and then framing your life around that definition, obviously is going to take you to a place you want to be. Because we all just like chasing our tails, like to what end, right? Like it's super easy to make yourself busy and busy and busy and have less time and more money. But that doesn't give you anything, and often have to go through that process to understand it. But it's funny, because it's like everyone will tell you that.
Yeah.
You speak, even people doing it.
Yeah.
And people will quote things, like that have been quotes like from Confucius or Buddha, and they like throw these quotations out on Instagram, and you're like, but dude, like, you need to practice that. Like, it's not,
Yes.
It doesn't do anything,
So true.
And so I was saying the stuff for a long time, and I had to come to a place where I needed to practice it.
Yeah.
And I'm not there. I'm like getting there slowly.
Yeah. Let me give you a quote. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water.
Yeah, right on, dude.
We will never have a chance to not practice it, because it is the practice. Like, the practice is the way. It's the success in some people's minds. Like, yeah. What did you land on? What, in terms of being able to identify what success meant for you?
Time, like in my life, just for things that I loved. And the company wasn't like taking that away from me. And so you'd look around, I'd go into the office, and some days I didn't even know who some of the people were in there. And it was my company, I had a business partner. It was just became this like little monster. I just didn't even like it, and it was stealing from me, like that's how I felt. Like, I had resentment towards this thing I built. But then you have all these trappings around you, because that's how it works, right? It's systemic. You have suddenly you have a property and you need to pay, and you're scared of losing that. And that's where the fear comes in. It's just like all the spheres, just, so that's where it started, was time. But I didn't know how to fix it. And I've spoken about this before, but I went to Vancouver in I think it was last year or the year before, the Vancouver International Mountain Film Festival. And Chris Burkhardt was giving a talk. Now, if you're talking about business and like the world of media, like, he's like he's high up there in terms of like an example of how you can capitalize on like marketing and brand. And at that stage, when I looked at him, there was nothing there that I wanted, like not one thing. I'd been through my own process. And so by the time I saw the talk, it's not that I don't respect him. Like, it's amazing what he's built, and it's incredible. And and I know how much work it takes. And so I have so I was like in awe of like the amount of hours and work. And so I watched the talk, sat there, and it was just like, it was a PowerPoint, and you'd obviously like it's super slick and it was well done. And you had all the like bullet points and the quotes and the sayings. But I didn't feel like there was like a lot of honesty in it. It was just like, it was like a really slick presentation, and it was entertaining. And then someone in the Q&A asked him a question, which is something that we all battle with a lot, about balance. Like, how do you balance a family and like being on the road like 270 days of the year? And he spoke of his mentor when in his early 20s, said you have 4 burners in your life. You have work, health, family, friends. So 4 things that require a lot of attention, a lot of love, and a lot of effort. If you want to be great at any one of them, you just got to drop 1, ideally 2. If you want to be great, not good, not average, like great. And so he said, early 20s, he just dropped friends, it's gone. Like conscious choice, And I sat there and I was like, this just like hit so deep. And I was sitting and I was like, oh my God, like I did that, but not consciously. I made that decision, but it wasn't conscious. And I've been doing that now for 8 years. And I was so angry for like 6 months after that. I was just like livid with myself. Wow. Just absolutely livid, not because I'd done it, like that's fine. It was just because I hadn't ever sat myself down and consciously decided, okay, I'm going to do this. And like, I understand that this is going to sacrifice. And I think that was largely what was, driving me to exhaustion, is like trying to find balance where balance is not attainable. Just being okay with the fact that you're not going to have balance. So like it's all going into this right now. Yeah. So that really sent me reeling for a while, and really, then I stepped away and I started trying to be conscious about the effort that I was putting into in areas of my life.
Yeah.
So thank you to Chris Burkhardt if he's out there.
Bro, we need to get him this podcast. Yeah, far out, hey, those freight trains. Firstly, you'll get a tickle with a feather, right? And then you'll like get a prod with a stick. And then you'll get a brick thrown at you. And then if you still don't realize what's going on, you're just going to get hit by a bus. And like, then you'll realize, okay.
Totally.
Some of those truths just keep knocking and knocking, eh?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't escape it. You have to acknowledge it at some point. You're forced to.
Yeah, and I think you spoke to it so well in what you said. It's just, as soon as we accept it and acknowledge it and like we're okay with it, it's like this liberation of just like, oh, okay, cool. I know, like there's a part of me that like is saying, that's rough. Like I'm really struggling to accept that, my good friends have not been able to, well, I don't have the good friends that I used to have. And like, I've been through this with pursuing running and things like that in many lights, friends from the past that, I've lost connection with in some way. And it's, once you can understand, like the unbalance you sometimes need to take on to achieve some sort of accolade or success in inverted commas, which might be termed differently later on down the line. But yeah, it's okay. Like it's all right to have to go through that.
Totally. And it's made me a better father, because you have a newborn in the house and there's a lot of effort going in there, and a lot of things fall away outside and things that are part of your daily life. And I'm just like, I haven't been in the water, since we had him. And I live 50 meters from the beach. There's a spot out front, but I'm totally fine with that. It's like, It's cool. It's what I'm doing, and it's super important to me. And hopefully he'll be coming in the water with me in the not too distant future. So
get him in there, man. It's got to learn young. Hey, I really want to ask, has the reason why you make film changed lately over the last 10 years?
Yeah, I think that I've definitely gone through an acknowledgement of the importance of story. Um, a lot of people talk about, like, there's a lot of these words that get thrown around all the time about storytelling and meaning, and everyone wants to be a storyteller, but you don't see a lot of storytellers, You see a lot of people telling other people's stories. But for me, what a story is relating something that's happened, and it can be to someone else or it could be to you, and then threading a message in there that is yours, right? That's you, and that's my story. And so I try to do that with every film I make. There's a little piece of me in there that, it's someone else's story and it's someone else's narrative or journey or whatever they went through. But I'm telling you something, and it's in there. Some people will find it. Sometimes some people won't find it. That's okay, because it's for me, and I only need, one or two people to connect with it for it to actually matter. And so I've become much more conscious of that, and been better at hiding it as well. Because you don't want to be preachy, and I don't want to preach to people. I just want them to walk away with a feeling, or maybe look at a situation slightly differently, or be inspired, or whatever it is. And so becoming a better storyteller has been becoming better at threading those three themes through the narrative, much more subtly. So and building it into the person's journey, that's really difficult. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's harder, but building it into their story and making it true, without manipulating their story. So it's like this very delicate balancing act that you have that is really, really difficult, harder than any like technical aspect of filmmaking or whatever it is, like that actual just, and this is in writing and in film or in painting or whatever it is, it's the same. And so that I find like it's just a challenge. Like it's a massive problem that you've got to solve. And I love that, like just getting into it and being like, how can I do this? And how can I make this in the best way? Because there's 1,000 ways to do it. And no one will ever do it, I won't even make the film the same way if I did it again next month, because I'm in a certain space and it's quite immediate. And it's why I love the documentary format. It's like really quick and immediate. And you can do these things. And I use quick loosely because filmmaking is like a hideously laborious process, but it is fairly immediate in terms of like the shoot happens quite quick from the planning, and then you can turn it around in post quick, or you can take a longer time to sit on something. And different work needs different periods. And then you never finish it, you just abandon it at some point. And you just let it go, and you're not happy with it, but like that you've put what you could in that period. It's never perfect. There's always something that's going to bug you. So I just love, I love that challenge of the thread. And I suppose that's what's really, initially it was more about the actual construct of like, how do you do a shoot and how do I capture everything and how do I then piece that together? And I was like, okay, well, I think I know how to do that well enough, and now this becomes super important.
I think it's, from someone that originates from South Africa, an incredible country in terms of, its history, where it stands today, the situation on the ground there with just the incredible levels of, I don't think I've been anywhere else where I've seen such incredible differences in the way people live. It's incredibly confronting as well as fascinating, I suppose. In with all the respect I can say, fascinating. And I know that there's a number of films that come out of South Africa that are that try and speak to that culture and speak to that importance to acknowledge what has happened there and the current state of play there at the moment as well. I found it super interesting that you shared a little bit of a post about the doco that was put together called Street Surfers, I think.
Yeah.
The one with Frank Solomon, and I think, funny enough, I think it was even like supported by Corona or something like that. But I was lucky enough to watch that actually when I was in South Africa in Cape Town at the end of last year. Incredible film about the way two gentlemen surf the streets of the town that they live in, collecting rubbish, and that's the way they generate an income and life. Can you speak to and you've done some films that touch on a number of cultural narratives and things that can be pretty difficult to approach, I'd imagine. And I especially love the work you did with Tabang and his film. How does that all sit and feel when you're putting something so powerful out there that has this element of running is a beautiful thing and we should all do it and get outdoors, but then there's this real truth behind it too, that we've got to sort a lot of things out in this world?
Yeah, obviously, I'm from a long stock of South Africans, and this is my home, and it's the only country that's giving me a passport. But I've always struggled with the idea that I can't call myself African, but I am in the geographical sense, and I do feel deep connection with the place. But then I also feel like an outsider often, because there's so many worlds here, and it's impossible for that not to shape you in terms of your reality and your privilege and your beliefs and who you are as a person. And so, of course, it's shaped a lot of things for me. And, you'll see elements of that in my work that's not necessarily based here. There's elements of it in Transamericana, which we just released now, about, in so many countries, it's so easy to live in a bubble and hang out with the same people with the same belief set and same circumstances as you, and then point fingers at another bubble which you know nothing about, and argue with them about mundane stuff, like just the dumbest stuff, just arguing without knowing and without really knowing who they are. And in South Africa, it's really, you have to deliberately do it to live in a bubble. I don't want to, I don't live like that. I'm confronted by my privilege every day. And so while I have certain belief sets, those belief sets for some people are just ridiculous because they just need running water, like sanitation and food. And the fact that they don't have it is completely ludicrous to me, where it's possible for them to have it, but all these decisions are being made. And so a lot of discussions that get had are I just don't understand them, because it's, why are you giving people in township, you're telling them to wear masks for their health when they don't have running water? It's completely ridiculous. So if you want people to be healthy, give them clean conditions to live in, running water and food. And then we'll talk about anything else after that, for sure. We can talk about other stuff, but only after that, And so that stuff infuriates me and makes me mad. And I don't talk about it a lot, but I try to put elements of it in my work where it's just if you have a conversation with anyone, you're going to connect on some level, and then you're going to gain understanding. And, for me, that's a lot of what Transamericana was about. And when you go into these communities, when I did Tabang's not poor. Not in Tabang's eyes. He's not poor. On what basis are you calling poverty, Tabang's affluent. He has a house, food, job, like he's styling and he's stoked. So I didn't want to go in there with Western eyes and like with my reference points of like what success was and impose that on him. And I felt that was super important going in there, shooting with him, being like, yeah, we like rolling into like the Muhammad Ali of like Haram Kuwa, you know, like this is, you know, there was no pity. Like, of course, I need to give people in France or the US like a little bit of like the realities of like, you know, this is what you think is normal. This is his normal, you know, and you like got your trainer and you have like your diet and all your physicians, and this guy's dragging a tire up a hill, like up and down, you know, and he's competing with you. And so it was just like, yeah, it's nerve-wracking going in because I don't want to impose any of my stuff on him, and I want to show the respect, and then I also want to give him something that he's proud of, that he can show his family and friends, and something that will help him, because there's value in these films in terms of being a pro athlete. So yeah, it's a constant like navigation and self-examination that you have to have, not to put your shit on other people, because we all have different like, you know, goals and dreams and outlooks, and it's something that I'm like, you know, it's taken a long time to learn, but I'm learning it slowly.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same when you're telling someone else a story, right? When you go in there and you sit down and have like an hour and a half conversation with someone, you know, like that's what I was saying to you before we started this, is I love the podcast because it's such a privilege to be sat down and ask questions and then given the space just to ramble, you know, just to talk. And you just don't get that a lot. And it's a real privilege, like to have that done to you. And so I love the opportunity to chat about, you know, catch up and chat about things that you've been thinking about. And it's something that I love your tagline, and it's like the art of conversation, because I learned the art of conversation through film by being forced to sit down with someone and have a conversation, you know, and to get to a space where I meet the person and then 40 minutes later they're crying. So like really like getting deep into stuff and like really making them forcing them to self-examine as well in that process. And I really love that. And it's not always stuff that I align with, you know, but I have to be able to give them the space to tell me their story. And then have the integrity to take that story and not manipulate it, and be truthful and give them something that they're going to be proud of. And that's always been really important for me, like that ethical line in documentary filmmaking. Because I remember when I started, I read a quote where documentary filmmaking is the most manipulative art form like that exists, because it is so easy to manipulate. It's so easy to change things around or put inflections on things and, you know, cut up the interviews. And so you have to have, you know, or for me, like, I don't want to do that. I want to be honest, and I want to be authentic, and I want to have integrity in my work, and I want to be proud of it. And I want the person that I've spent time with to be proud of it too. And so that's like really like been always a guiding light, you know.
Oh man, that is incredible. What a share. Dude. So many things hit me in what you've just said there. It's unreal. Like, yeah, I just need to take a moment to process. You know, just to add to it and not take anything away from it, my mum has, for as long as I've ever been aware of it, has worked with people with disabilities and people that have acquired brain injuries and have been born disabled. And this one thing she said to me when I was old enough to listen to her is that when someone is disabled and they look at you, from their eyes, they don't see that they're disabled. Only you see them as disabled. Like they're not looking back at themselves and they don't see what you see. So when you start to treat them like they're disabled, a little bit going on from what you said is like when you start to treat people from your perspective with your Western eyes that they're underprivileged, that's when their world changes. But to them, they're quite often they're the happiest people going around. Like, and it when she once told me that, it fucking broke my heart. Like I was like, oh God, you can apply that to so many things, and that's just why I wanted to say that, because you've just.
It's a really good example. You know? It's actually funny you mention that, because I started watching a docu last night called Crib Camp, which is about this camp that they had in the 70s for disabled people, and how it kind of changed the world, like to get civil rights for disabled people in the US. And that's exactly what they said in that docu. It's like disabled people weren't the problems, everyone else. And it's 100%. And that's applicable on almost every sphere of your life. You know? It's usually you.
And anyone you approach and you see them as different, they do not see it like it's you're making them different the way that you approach the situation. And it's when you start to think about that, it's like we have so much work to do and we have so much more influence than it's got nothing to do with how many Instagram followers you got. You've got so much influence every moment you make an action. And it's just, yeah, it speaks to so much of what you've said this evening, mate. Like if you're conscious of what you're doing, it can have vast implications, positive, negative, and you've got the ability to take control over how you want to have situations that you come across evolve. Yeah, man. Hey, I just want to touch on it quickly, because back when we worked pretty closely together in 2018, it was after Ricky did his run across America, and we were speaking about Trans Americana, the film that you mentioned before about Ricky's run. And I remember it's something that's stuck in my mind. I remember you talking to me about it and saying this film is not going to be a short film. It can't be a short film. You know, it's not going to be a 15-minute Salomon running TV episode. This has got some depth. When in the process did you realize that film was going to be a lot more about everything but running?
Yeah, this is interesting, because I had a Skype call with Ricky, when was it? December 2016. And he told me about the project, asked me if I'd be keen to document it, framed it like kind of on the byline, like, you know, I'm going to go explore my country because, you know, I'm confused about what it means to be an American. And so I thought that was compelling off the bat without like thinking too deep about it, you know, and I've worked with Ricky for over a decade. He's a compelling character. He's thought-provoking. He says cool stuff, like he thinks about what he's saying. So I knew that there would be something there, you know. And when you can get sold in a line, like, then you're onto something. There's like depth there, right? And so already before you even think about the physical journey that he's going to go on, there was substance. Because on a trip like that, just the physical journey alone has enough substance to carry quite a long docu, because you know that stuff's going to go down. And then I also knew that the only way to capture it was like to truly like get a piece of it, like to really like take that into like people, to like let them like feel like they were in there, was to remove the cameraman. So to have Ricky shoot it himself. And logistically, that's also the only way you're going to do that. So, but I'd already done some self-shoot pieces that I'd been like playing around with. It was like a format that I'd been kind of toying with since like 2016, 2017. It's incredibly difficult in post. It's just, you know, it's just a massive undertaking, but it was the only way. And so I knew that And immediately when someone's shooting something that's happening to them, you can sit and watch those clips for like, you're in it, like you're just watching for like 10 minutes. And you're talking about in most movies, a cut's like 2 seconds, average, like over a 90-minute movie, every shot's like not longer than 2 seconds on average. So it immediately balloons the length already before you've even gone anywhere, So I just knew it would be long. I didn't know how long. I think my deal with Salomon was to make a 40-minute film. That was the deal. And then it's the same ebb and flow of like the whole creative process of like, oh, okay, what does it mean to be an American? And then he goes off on the run and he meets people and everyone's cool. And you're like, fuck, like now what? Like that was it. Like that's it. 20 minutes in, he hasn't even reached like out the South and you're like, story's done. Like it's finished, And so I was sitting in the edit and you're like, holy shit, like this is like what else are you gonna say for the the rest of the film? And there's so many stories there. I have like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours of footage, so many different moments. Like there's a million stories there of what happened to Ricky. And so I really had to sit with paper and like Excel spreadsheets of like, what are we saying? Like, what's this journey going to be on? And I chatted with Jared, who I'd sent out to be with Ricky on the shoots. I chatted with him about how Ricky was, what he had gone through, things that he was like challenging and facing. Like I was speaking with Ricky, and then obviously followed the journey like voyeuristically, like just tracking it and seeing his posts, which I really enjoyed along the way. And then I spent a lot of time with Ricky afterwards. So we were in San Francisco when he finished, spent some time with him, and then I actually went back to San Francisco probably about a year later, and spent 3 days with Ricky. Speaking to him, asking him questions. And by that stage, I realized that this film was just about Ricky. And everything else was just like, initially the excuse, the realization, and then like the internal struggle and like self-growth. And so I kind of knew where it had gone, but it's not to say, Ricky had recognized elements of those. And so I started asking him questions, not in an interview, just like, oh, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And we would have these discussions, planting seeds, because I didn't want to put words in his mouth. I didn't want to have to tell him to say things to make the narrative. And I just wanted to explore ideas with him. And so we just had conversations and we would chat about stuff. And then we went and sat down and did like a 7-hour interview. It was like 7 hours. We just sat and just like thrashed out an interview. And then I could construct the story off of that. So it's just a massive, massive process. And it was one that I learned a lot from in terms of how to put something together. But, it's a really long answer to your question, but there was a lot of different elements that were interesting. And so the minute you have that, you just know that you could take tangents in a lot of different ways. And so it was just about picking the strongest story. Like that's what's so difficult in storytelling, is stripping it down and stripping and straight. And that's all you're doing, is you're just taking the story, because there's a lot of offshoots. People always tell stories like that. They go off on a tangent, they talk about something else, and it's like, but that's not what we're saying. And so in film, you're just taking all of the story and you're just stripping it and stripping it and stripping it and stripping it until it's in its barest, simplest form that you can then present. And that was what that process was. And it took, we were in post for over a year, eventually, just trying to get it to a place where it was as simple as it could, that translated his journey and then like his transformation in that journey.
Wow, man. So what does success look like for Transamericana?
Yeah, so we had massive plans for Transamericana, like when we were in the making of it. COVID threw a lot of those dreams away, but ultimately I kind of stepped away from the planning when Flo was born. I just wasn't too interested anymore. I felt like I'd done my work with the film, which was make it. And they said then that they were going to just launch on YouTube, which I just thought was insane. But that's just from an egotistical point of view, that you want it on a big screen or whatever. And then they're like, "Oh, and it's going on YouTube for free, just like any other episode kind of thing." I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm down with that. Let's just see how that works." And what a call, I'll give credit where it's due. It was like a great call to pop it on YouTube. Perfect timing. And so for me, it's been like more successful than I thought it would be. Like, where else would you get 200,000 people watching your film? The fact that people are sitting on YouTube for 75 minutes blows my mind. Like, that's insane. And so I'm super stoked, and the engagement and watching how different people resonate with different parts of the film, and like different interactions and their takeaways, and and the message is simple. It's so 101. It's like the most basic message. It's not super deep, but in the world we live in, like, it is necessary to sometimes just get down to basics. There's a lot of insanity at the moment. And you're like, guys, on a basic level, it's just like level here, And so it's really good timing in that respect with the film, because people are like, oh yeah, like, sure, like we're all like pretty much the same, And I love that, because you're like, yeah, it's exactly. So it's cool. I really love the conversations it sparked, and there's been like great engagement on it, and I get like lovely messages from people just saying it's like changed their week or changed their life or whatever it is, and you just told a story, and that's the effect you had, and that's super powerful. You can't ever expect any more than that. You don't need awards. You don't need anything else like other than that. Because that's what the point of it is.
Yeah. So often, man, like those awards they can be forgotten. It's like winning a race, it's so often or the winning time, or the you work so much to get those little numerical achievements. And then after all of that, there's just so many other elements that you really do remember at the end of the day.
100%. It's like the same lessons we have to learn continually, right?
Yeah. Without overdoing quotes, I think, it was definitely this year, but I heard this one that it was like, perfection is not when you have anything more to add, it's when you have nothing left to take away.
What a great quote to like apply in creativity.
Yeah. You've spoken to it, man. Yeah.
Oh, it's hard, man.
I mean, yeah, I don't need to repeat that. What you've been able to create has been no doubt life-changing for a lot of people. It's very, very cool. Very cool.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. And I'm so stoked that I was lucky enough to be able to work alongside you on some of those elements too, which is
China. That I'll shoot in China was just still. I just remember laughing. That's all I remember. Is just laughing my way through 10 days of like a lot of challenges, logistically, and I really enjoyed it.
It must be so interesting for you and I found this very much too, and I absolutely, it's one of the most enjoyable things about the jobs for me that I've had within the culture of running is understanding people off camera and behind camera, and hanging out with them in a bedroom, just hanging out, You must know so many people that are considered the best in the world at what they do, as athletes, as influencers, as whatever you want to call it. You must have some really interesting insights to who they are off the camera. I could only imagine, mate.
Yeah, it has been amazing, but it's not only what I've really enjoyed is watching other people go on their life journey, right? Like I met a lot of people the first time in 2011, like Anna Frost, Killian, Ryan, Francois, Ricky. These guys I met in 2011, and for the next 10 years, we made creative projects together, some more than others, but it was fascinating and seeing them change, and sometimes being there in very like conflicting times in their life where they were being confronted with change, or realization. And that's always, it's like a real privilege to be able to be there and then to be able to be allowed to document it. It's been like, it's been like, a lot of it's been like therapy for me, it was a wonderful period of learning and making that I really enjoyed. Even if I could have probably enjoyed it more, like I said, but I wouldn't change it because it's just nice. It was a nice concentrated period of life experience that I needed. And that's the stuff I need. I needed those experiences in order to go on my own journey.
Man, I tell you what, this conversation has been a therapy journey session in itself. I tell you what. I am so stoked we finally got to have a yarn, mate. I'm so grateful to be able to have this connection and just to, it just fills me with appreciation and also I can't wait to just continue on some of the topics we skimmed over.
Yeah. No, I appreciate you having me on. I've really enjoyed I've enjoyed listening to your podcast. I listened to Adam Gibson and I listened to one of Tyson, and I think it was Mark Gardner. Like
regenerative. Yeah.
Man, yeah, I love those. Those spoke to a lot of things that I'm really interested in. There's some nuggets to take away.
Is regenerative agriculture something that's actually a couple of people from South Africa have sent me examples of people over there doing it and having some real great success. Do you see it a lot over there? Is it something that's picking up some attention?
Yeah, so we moved out of the city 3 years ago, and we moved into a community that had like moral value set that aligned with us. So we're very fortunate. Like we're surrounded by people doing incredible things in the South Peninsula, and I would say specifically like in the Western Cape region, there's a really big push, for solutions. Not always like the right solutions, but there's like people problem solving it, and organic farming has like boomed, but I think there is more and more of this regenerative agriculture. Understanding the wild like foodscape that lives around us. So we have people that like really focus on foraging, teaching people how to eat off the land, off the coast, just all seaweed and everything that's at our disposal here. So there's incredible people around here to learn from. I wouldn't say it's a general South African thing. I think we've put ourselves in like a little bit of a pocket. But it's been we're into as well. I kind of just learning, growing stuff and learning how to do it in the best way. And it's just it's never ending though, right? It's just like you're just always learning something else, and so you're just trying to navigate and do your best every day, and be the nicest human you can be on that day.
That's it, man. Yeah, you've nailed it on that level. That's for sure. Have you seen a lot of people have also been sending me, oh my God, you've got to watch My Octopus Teacher. Have you had a chance to check it out?
I have, yeah. Amazing docu. It was actually, I lived above that spot for a year.
Yeah, wow.
It's incredible. And I've spent my life in the ocean around here, and you see something like that, and you're like, I don't know anything. I need to go. And I think that's also something that I've really appreciated, especially with going back to Ricky. We did a project where he spoke about one mountain's enough for an entire lifetime, and having that ethos, because I've had a decade of world travel, and if I never see a plane again, I'll be happy. I'm happy where I am, and I don't know enough about the landscape around me, and I'm trying to learn more. And something like the Octopus Teacher is like how much value you can get from really examining a small place in depth, on a continuous basis. What you can learn is more than you would learn by traveling the world for 10 years.
Yeah.
And that was Artist Front Door. And so, yeah, what a film,
Yeah. Mate, it's amazing to hear you say that, knowing that you've got a little boy, and a lot of that story speaks to him and spending time with his son in that little place they call home. And I just can't wait to see what we're going to be talking about in 15 years' time when when we're there.
But Tyson mentioned it about going through the 15-year change. So who knows in 15 years?
Oh mate, let's just be present when it comes in any moment, and we'll be all right. Hey? Dude, I think that's probably the longest chat I've ever had on this podcast, and I enjoyed every second of it, man. So thank you again.
I apologize for rambling if I did.
Definitely didn't in my ears. It was nothing like that, mate. So Dean, until next time, brother.
No, thanks a lot for having me on. I really appreciate it. It's been great to catch up as well, and I love the podcast format. Love what you're doing and all the different people you're having on. It's really cool.
Cheers, bro.
Thanks for joining in today and listening to our conversation with Dean Leslie. I really hope you enjoyed it and have some takeaways. And I hope if you are a creative that you really get out there and put your work to the world, because we need more creatives in this space. If you want to find out a little bit more about Dean and the work that he is doing and has done in the past, please head over to wanderingfever.com. Thanks for tuning in, keep well, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.